Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook, so you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one-size-fits-all protocols, just real answers, deep-rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. Hello, Kara.
Hi.
I'm so happy you took the time to be on the show. This is going to be such a great conversation and so needed, I think, for so many people. But Kara is a licensed psychotherapist, clinical supervisor, and mental health educator specializing in women's mental health, ADHD, trauma, and nervous system regulation. She helps high functioning women heal from self abandonment, reconnect with their authenticity, and break free from cycles of burnout and overwhelm. So, Kara, I would love to know a little bit more on how you got into this, a little more about you, and we'll rock and roll from there.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Just your message and everything just really aligns with what I do. And so I'm very excited to be here to talk to you today and to talk to the people that listen to you. So my name is Kara Cruz. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am in California. I work 100% remotely, and my primarily the people I work with are women in their late 20s up to early 50s is kind of the primary age group of women I work with. And I got into psychotherapy because I always knew that I wanted to be a therapist. Back in high school, I signed up for it was called a peer consultation, like an elective class, and it ended up being something very new, and they never really established it. We kind of met in the classroom and really just kind of sat around and talked and did homework from other classes. But from that age, I knew that that was something I wanted to do, even though that class didn't pan out. But I kind of got sidetracked along the way because a lot of times the field of mental health wasn't really, I don't know, recognized as like a great field of work to go into anyway by the people around me at that time. And so I started to go down different paths, and eventually in my late 20s, realized that I really wanted to be working in mental health. And so I went from an education world and shifted over to working in the nonprofit world, starting from prevention programs, worked at a shelter for teens, and always knew that I wanted to go back to grad school to get my master's degree and to be a psychotherapist with the end goal of having my own private practice. And at that time, that sounded very impossible. I had a lot of, imposter syndrome. Running a business sounded something that others do, and something that I probably would never be able to do. But thankfully, along the way, I think just the right people were in my path, and I saw them doing it and had good mentors. And I worked through different programs as I worked through grad school. Well, my bachelor's degree, grad school, kind of moved up through different programs at the agency that I worked at for many years. And the end goal was that I went to grad school, graduated. I actually went back to graduate school when my son was a little over a year old. So what it took me was, kind of being stuck in the rut of the daily mundane, just getting through life, and that dream on the shelf of I'm going to pick up the grad school apps and figure it out and go back to school. It was always a thing I'm gonna do. And then when I was on maternity leave, I think I just had, not that I had enough time, but I just had enough space to really sit down and explore graduate school. And that's when I submitted all my applications. So when I came back to work from maternity leave, that was my plan. So I submitted applications and then was accepted. And then a year later, I went to grad school with a little toddler. So it was a very hard time. I was working full time, going to school full time. I was a full time mom. Thankfully, I had help from, family members, and my husband was wonderful and great and supportive. But I got through it, but definitely experienced the burnout, the overwhelm, exhaustion. But, got through grad school, became a therapist, and eventually led into going into private practice. So
I feel like you can't fully understand the depths of that unless you have like a toddler, like just how hard that is. I know I really didn't until my toddler. I'm like, oh, you really understand that you have no time and you can't blink without watching them for 2 seconds, you know? I think we'll explore this in a lot deeper way, but what are some things you wish you would have known or tools you wish you would have had? I'm sure you teach these a lot, when you were going through all that.
Yeah, I mean, as I was talking and then just kind of sitting and listening to, I have like these flashes of, getting off of work. I'm sitting on the couch, fully exhausted from my long day at work and like, picking my son up from my in-laws and just sitting on the couch with him on my chest, like, I don't think I can move. And it's only 5 o'clock and I have to do dinner and I have homework to do. And then I have memories of the weekends sitting, writing my papers and having a little toddler tap, tap, tap on my I mean, it's like, oh yeah, it's all great memories. And I remember being in it thinking, okay, we're going to be on the other side of this. It's going to be okay. But it's almost like having a child where you don't remember how hard it is. You come out of it. And I know it was hard, but I'm like, I don't think I really remember how hard it was. I can only imagine. But if what I wish I had known, oh gosh, working full time and going to school full time, the idea of doing that, sounds really so out of reach for me now. And I think I wish that I had learned sooner to speak up for myself and set my boundaries in the workplace. And when I was at capacity and burnout and being asked to take on more, do more, and I had been vocal, but I wish I would have trusted myself more to know that this isn't something that I'm not tough enough and strong enough. This is a capacity issue. And my body is telling me you're overwhelmed, you're burned out, and you should listen to it. Because I went a very long time in that state, and until I went into my private practice, when I became my own boss and I worked with the clients that lit me up and said no to the times that didn't work for my schedule and my family, and had those boundaries, things began to change for me when I was able to do that. And I go back and think about that old version of me and I think, oh, I feel so sad. And so, my heart goes out to her because she was doing so much and it was pretty amazing that she was able to do so much, So for anyone who's in that space where they're just overwhelmed, burned out, and they're feeling like it's them and they're not practicing enough self-care, or they're not doing something enough or thinking their way through it. It's not you. Your body is telling you something for a reason. You're tired, you're burned out, you're overwhelmed. And actually the key is to do less and say no.
Oof. This is funny. This is my fifth podcast episode of the day, and all five in a row, without me prompting, have all said very similar things in different ways. And it's all about women, boundaries, burnout, anxiety. And I think that's a hard thing because we don't understand what boundaries feel like. We don't really know what they mean. We don't feel comfortable with them. Maybe we say no to one thing. We're like, there it is. I did it. Boundaries, and it's like, I think as women, we feel guilty, like we need to do it all. And so I'd be curious two things. One, if somebody's maybe new to boundaries, maybe doesn't understand them, what's something they can do to help gently shift that for them? And two, if somebody's dealing with burnout, but maybe doesn't know it, what would be some of the things you would kind of look for?
Yeah. For boundaries, we can read a blog about boundaries, which is helpful. We can learn about it in our head, what it means. But when I'm working with clients, I really invite them to let's get out of our heads for a minute of what we know about it, and let's check in with our bodies and see what our body tells us. And immediately when we go into talking about boundaries, their body language starts talking. They start doing things like this in session, putting their hands up. I see deep breaths. I see a lot happening in their body as they bring, their memory and experience about a boundary to life. It's going to be different for each person. And so really it's the first step is let's just talk about it and see what comes up in your body and then see where that takes us. And your body's going to tell you. You don't need to go Google Chat GPT on a website or have somebody else tell you what a boundary is. You're going to know if you look more inward. And so that's where we start. We start very minimally and we start with what body sensations come up. For me, it's always something in my chest and my throat that tells me something happened with a boundary. Either somebody didn't hear me, somebody didn't listen to my no, or there's something that I need to be doing, but my body's feeling resistant or repelled by. So that's the first step is what is your body doing? In terms of the burnout question, it goes back to it again. You can't think your way through burnout. The key to not being burnt out is really to doing less. And that's what's really hard. That's where people get stuck, is because it's what do I say no to? There's things that I don't want to say no to because I enjoy. There's things I don't want to say no to because I have guilt about it. And there's things I don't want to say no to because it's kind of like a basic need, have to, maybe working and paying bills and things like that. So we have to kind of start with what is the burnout stemming from for them. And that's going to be unique and individual for each person too. And so really it's looking inward and, we can get all the tips and tools and listen to other people for advice. But the solution and the answer is really going to start with the person. And so that's where I really try to have, when I'm working with my clients, I ask them if they can kind of turn inward, because what your best friend is going through with what's burning them out is not going to be the same thing that's burning you out.
No, absolutely not. It's the same thing with like health. Like, stop, when you ask everybody, well, what's working for you? It's like your body is going to respond different than your friend. It's like it very much takes an individualized approach, you know? Um, what would you say you see maybe as two or three of the most common things that people come to you for that you kind of are working through with them?
Yeah. A lot of times people start with a symptom or something, but really it's the experience that the person is having is that there's some sort of guilt or shame they have about who they are authentically. And they're trying to cover up. And it's really hard to get to that place because that part of them that they're trying to cover up at one point in time was either told it was wrong, it was rejected, not accepted. And so, and that can look different again from person to person, but a lot of times what it is overriding their own cues, overriding their own nervous system and body, what it's telling them that they don't want to be doing or do want to be doing. It's overriding that, and it's meeting somebody else's need first. A lot of times it's self-abandonment. So it can be the client who does so much for everyone else and nothing for themselves because there's no time or energy. But it's not always that person who does everything for everybody else. Sometimes it's the person who just doesn't follow through with promises to themselves. They have a lot of ambition, they have a lot of goals, they get excited about certain things, and then they just don't follow through for whatever reason. And so there's this guilt and shame because I failed. I basically broke a promise to myself. And that can be in the form of career goals. It can be fitness, where they want to be with their fitness. It can be where they want to be with their health. It can be where they want to be socially in their relationship. So that same issue can show up in different situations as well. But it's that, failure to show up for themselves, breaking promises.
How would you walk somebody through the process to just reconnecting with themselves when they've been so disconnected for so long?
Yeah, and it's gonna you always have to be careful because what each person can tolerate is gonna be different.
Yes.
Some people can get through that a little bit more quickly, and it's not a race of who can go at what speed or how many sessions. People say how many sessions. It's going to be
Yeah.
different from person to person. What we don't want to do is we don't want to overwhelm the system, overwhelm the body. So if a
Mhm.
person is pretty, we call resource, where they can kind of maybe, and I don't mean handle a lot because they override their nervous system, but like they have support. They kind of have, they can regulate themselves emotionally if something feels kind of big. We might go a little bit, I wouldn't say quicker, but they might not feel as overwhelmed as quickly. But for somebody else who's never done that before, has never experienced emotion, who's never experienced things like sadness, pain, grief, harm, if there's been trauma involved, we're going to open that window a little bit at a time. And so really it's just building their capacity to be with themselves and be with their emotions. And over time, gradually expanding that window because then they can tolerate a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. It doesn't feel as overwhelming. So the old idea of like flooding the nervous system and just ripping the Band-Aid off, that can actually be more traumatizing to the system. We don't want to do that. Exposure therapy is one thing where we're going to expose little by little. And that's the idea of like opening that window, but we don't want to do the whole rip the Band-Aid off, flood the person, overwhelm them, and then they go into shutdown because their body doesn't feel safe. They don't feel safe. And then they never come back to therapy, and then they're out there isolated on their own island without any support or resources.
Yeah, I see that a lot, especially in the health industry.
Mhm.
It's like, give me all of it right now. It's like, your body isn't ready for that.
Yeah.
It's actually literally why I got into bioresonance work, is it tells your body exactly what it needs right now, but it's not going to show everything at one time because your body is like, I can't handle all of this at one time. It's like piece by piece.
It reminds me, so there's a therapist I worked with who actually I really looked up to her when I started my practice because she had worked at the agency and she had started her own private practice. She's an eating disorder specialist. And when I looked at her model of her business, that's what I want to do. I want to have my own practice. She's also a trainer. She's a kind of a specialist in her niche. And I just really looked up to her. And so I actually ended up subleasing a space from her when I started my practice and just kind of like observed and watched how she was doing things. And she gave this analogy, and it was because I was consulting with her on a case and was referring them to somebody, but she gave this description of the alligator closest to the boat. And really it was like, imagine you're on a boat and you have a bunch of, when you work in trauma, I worked at an agency where we worked with a lot of children in foster care, and there's so much going on. The schools kind of like nagging them. they have unsafe home environments, they have all this childhood trauma, they have friend stuff. And it's like, you can't address everything at once. And so she said, think of you're in a boat, you've got a bunch of alligators swimming around you. And you can't get to all of them to be safe, but to maintain safety, you're going to address the one that's closest to the boat. So she called it, and I'm sure, I don't know if it came from someone else or she made that up, but it's the alligator closest to the boat. And really, we're looking at what's the next thing that's closest, that's most harmful, that we need to get you to safety, and then we kind of can work our way out from there. And so it's kind of building the foundation up from the ground up. So we start from the bottom and work our way up. So in therapy, a lot of times with my clients who really aren't in a boat with alligators, and most of them are very safe in their lives. They don't have a lot of immediate danger. They're not at risk of like a hospitalization or something like that. Most of my clients are pretty, I don't want to say high functioning because that sounds like a kind of a judgment, but they get through life really well. They have resources, they have some support, but they are at capacity and they're not going in a place they want to go. But we start from the alligator closest to the boat, a lot of times is sleep. We start with restoration, and we're like, let's start there. And it's little by little. It's like, what is your sleep trouble? Because is it falling asleep, staying asleep? Is it nightmares because there's trauma? We're going to just start with one thing. And we're going to make very small. It's like the atomic habits. We're going to build little by little. We're not going to overwhelm you. I don't want to add one more thing to your to-do list. I don't want you reading 10 books or doing 10 hours of therapy homework in between session. I want to start with one small thing. And if you come to session and it didn't go well, that's where we're at. And we're going to start there and we're going to just work from there.
Yeah. Now I'd be curious, working with a lot of high functioning or, very high achieving women, do they ever give you this is going too slow? It has to be more. That's all you want me to do? Can't we push it more? You know what I mean? And how do you kind of handle that?
They do. And so I address anything that kind of comes up in the room. I address it as like, that's a part of them. So there's a part of them that wants to get through it quicker. And instead of trying to fight that and say, no, you have to do what I'm saying, I'll just say it sounds like there's a part of you here that really wants to get through this quickly or something else. Can you tell me more about that? And we speak to that part if they feel comfortable sharing that. And we just start there because that's a part of them that's like kind of running the show. And if I try to tell that part, like, you're wrong, we're going to do this instead, it's probably going to shut them down even more. So it's like, we just address like, what need is being met? And is it financial? We want to get through quickly because this is expensive. I'm missing work and I'm paying for therapy. Is it a time thing? Is it an energy thing? A lot of times it's not even that. They're like, I'll put the time and the energy into it. It's more of, I'm not doing it well enough. I should be, everybody else would be getting through this or getting over this quicker. Why is it taking me so long? So it's about that. It goes back to them. There's something wrong with me because it's taking me longer. And so when we get to kind of the root of it, then we maybe speak to that part.
I love that. I love that. I had somebody recently come into our program and talk about parts work, which, I'm not a therapist, but I understand it. And it's like mind-blowing for people to understand that there are different parts. I would maybe describe this a little for somebody who has no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so there are specialists out there who have gone through extensive internal family system parts work trainings. I'm learning as I go. I am trained in EMDR, and my EMDR focus was trauma and parts informed approaches. So I'm not an expert in parts work, but when it was introduced to me, actually by one of the colleagues I had spoke to you about earlier, she lives in Michigan. I saw her actually like living what that looks like in herself. And so basically the idea of parts is that we all have parts within us. None of them are bad. When I heard the internal family systems therapy modality years ago, I always in my mind thought of it as like it was a family therapy.
Yeah.
Family systems, I was like, oh, the family is like your parts are a family. That makes so much sense. But we all have parts. No parts are bad. So we might have parts that we feel shame around or we don't like to show up, like our angry parts or our perfectionistic part. Maybe the world might view that as more acceptable. So we're okay with that and sharing that. But we have these different parts and they're all here to keep us safe. And they all developed at some point in our life as a way to keep us safe and to avoid trauma, to avoid rejection, abandonment, all the things that feel hurtful to us. It's much more complex than that, but we have these parts that are called protectors. We have managers, and managers are kind of the ones that run the show. And then we have firefighters, and they're kind of ones that put the fire out when the managers can't keep up with their jobs. And then we have exiles that are like the deeper wounded parts of us that are kind of buried deep. And then there's a sense of self. Self is like really who we are authentically. It's who we are when we feel like we can show up as we are, kind of accepting of all parts, for lack of a better word. But when we approach the parts as none of them are bad, and we are able to get curious and get to know them. There's the 8 C's in IFS, which when we can have a feeling of like clarity, compassion, curiosity about a part, that helps us to get better access and get to know the part a little bit more. And the goal is never to get rid of a part. So when someone comes to me and says, I want to get rid of anxiety, I'll say, like, if we got to know anxiety, I'm going to call her she, because my anxiety is a she. How has she helped you in your life? She's probably done things to keep you safe or to keep you going or motivated, or so we don't want to get rid of her, because we do need her. We need your nervous system. If a bear is chasing you in the woods, we need her to show up to tell you, hey, maybe not a good idea to go down this path alone, in the woods. A bear might be out there. So we need her, but we don't need her maybe all the time driving the bus.
Love that. That was a great explanation. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of long-winded, but that's.
Oh, no, it was perfect.
When I experienced another therapist, not only talking about parts, but saw her speaking to her parts, and we were at a retreat. It was a small group of us. I just had like this. I just remember having this moment of like, oh, like taking a deep breath and feeling like some relief, because it made me look at my parts with more compassion and some love of like the parts of me that I try to hide, like when I can be kind of, flaky or silly or like all over the place, or like my ADHD parts that show up. It's like I tried to hide those a lot, because it made me feel like people would think I wasn't smart or I was scatterbrained. It's like, no, like those parts of you are actually kind of cool too. And so when I could learn how to accept and love those parts of myself, I didn't want to hide them anymore. It's like, take it or leave it. People are going to like it or they're not, and that's okay.
I love that. I love that so much. Now, kind of wrap things up here. If you could give one or two, it's okay if it's three, but one or two ways, if somebody is maybe a little new or going through this process, your favorite ways to really support their emotional health or mental health, like what would those be? Like, what are your favorite ways to kind of support, maybe not support clients, but how they can support themselves too in the medium?
Okay. And you just mean, so I could, try to think of like, there's this, and this, but I really would say to support yourself is to start with one thing. Because we can add too many things. I would say start to listen to yourself. And when something's telling you something's off or doesn't feel good, see if there's a part of you that can trust that just a little bit. And if you were to trust it, what would that part be trying to tell you? So when for example, somebody who's feeling burnout and overwhelmed, and they're trying to figure out what do I do next, just see if you can like listen to what that overwhelm and burnout is trying to tell you, get to know it a little bit more, and just start there. And that's what they can do on their own. But I think that don't do it on your own all alone. Find support and find somebody who you'll know if you meet with somebody, if you're going to a coach or a therapist or a doctor, whoever, your body and your system's going to tell you if something feels off or not aligned. If you feel unsafe in their space, there could be a lot of different reasons for it, but it's probably there for a reason. So trust yourself. And if you go to somebody and you feel at ease immediately, or you feel heard, or you feel accepted, that is something in your body telling you that something probably is right.
So true. And we were talking about this too, if you find somebody doesn't work, don't give up. Don't make a story about yourself that therapy didn't work or this modality didn't work. Just find somebody else or a different modality, whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So many different things out there that can support you.
Yeah. And if there's if you're able to say, you know what, that didn't work and that's okay, but I'm going to try something different, or I'm going to think differently about it and try something out of the box, or, go to another person or see. It's because I think what happens is we try one thing and that didn't work. And then we kind of feel stuck, or we get shut down, or, and that happens, and it happens to all of us. But if you can take some space and then come back and say, I'm going to try again, or talk about why it didn't go well, speak your experience. If something didn't go well, what was it that didn't go well? And can you talk to that person about it? And if you don't feel safe doing that, then go to someone else. Go try another doctor, try another therapist. That's a question I ask all my new clients when they come in their intro call. I always say, if you've been in therapy before, I'd love to hear a little bit about what went well, what didn't go well. And it's not so much to like badmouth anyone else, but I want to hear, oh, I learned really well from this. It helps me to know modalities that worked for them. It helps me to know their learning style. It also helps me to know what doesn't feel safe for them, or where they get stuck. So I'll just say what went well, what didn't go well. And yeah, I love to know that. And it also tells me if there's something about me that, I can maybe kind of fine tune to create more safety in the beginning for them.
That's so important. I asked that on my health questionnaires too. Have you coached before? Because it gives you a huge insight on not only what they like, don't like, but who they are as a person too. So you kind of know where to approach it. I love that. Kara, thank you so much for taking the time and being on this podcast. I'm sure it was really helpful for many of our listeners. If people wanted to find you, where would they find you?
I have a website. It's karacruz.com, and that's the best place to find me. I also am on Instagram, and so Kara Cruz Wellness is where I'm at there. And I post pretty regularly. Anytime I have anything going on, I share it there. So Instagram's another place they can find me as well.
And I know you have something going on pretty soon, right?
Yeah, so I have a couple things happening. I have I think after by the time this show airs, it'll already be past, but I will be offering it throughout the year. I'm hosting a free workshop called It Begins With You. It's a 90-minute workshop for women, helping them to reconnect to themselves. But I also have a group that is a spin-off of that. So it's a small group 12-week program as well, where we get deeper into it. It's more personalized for the people who join the group. So the workshop is more learning webinar style, going to give some information, some resources. And then the group is a longer process where it would be limited to a smaller amount of people in California. And then if you're a health or wellness professional or therapist, I do have a private Facebook community called Wellness for Women Healers Community. You can look it up right in Facebook. I can give you the link to that for the notes, but you can join that community, and in there it's a group of professionals that work in all different fields. So we have yoga instructors, we have psychiatrists, therapists, social workers, lots of lactation consultants, doulas, and we're all of us work primarily with women in a healing space. And so we are in there together, and we can share, refer, connect, learn from one another as well.
I love that. I love it. So thank you so much. Make sure to go follow her, check her out. If you found this helpful, we would love to know. Either writing a review is always helpful, it reaches more people, or just sending Kara or me or DM just saying, hey, this really resonated with me. It helps me figure out what you guys like. So thank you again, Kara, and we will see you guys on the next show.
Thank you for having me.